In this video, I'm going to show you how to build this simple interactive timeline. Why am I calling this timeline as interactive? As you can see, our timeline, it looks really simple, but when you move your mouse from left to right or right to left, our timeline, it automatically detects movements of our mouse and it reacts based on that movements, which gives a kind of parallax effect. Isn't that beautiful? Without further ado, let's start. Hello and namaste everyone, this is Jitsaru with Coding Design. Welcome to our channel. If you are new here, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. Before jumping into the video, this is the data that I have taken from the YouTube studio. As you can see, lots of people, they are watching my video, but they're not subscribing. So it's not that you have to subscribe, but it's my humble request that if you appreciate my content or if you love my content, then please guys, don't forget to subscribe my channel. I have already created index.html file. Inside that, if I type exclamation sign and hit that tab button, then you'll get this HTML5 boilerplate. Now for the title, let's give simple interactive timeline using vanilla JavaScript. Within the body tag, I'm giving h3 heading with class name info, where I'm giving some hints or some information for the users. It's not that necessary, but it's your choice. Now next to that, let's create a div with class name timeline wrapper. And within that, I'm creating another list with class name timeline, and let's create different list items. For the first list, let's give span with class name title, and I'm giving their mother's birthday. And again, next to that, let's create another div with class name data. Within that, I'm creating h3 heading. You can give any heading as you like. And next to that, let's give span tag, and I'm giving their date. Similarly, let's give paragraph tag, and let's give this dummy text. Next to that paragraph tag, let's create another span tag with class name close, and I'm writing there click to close. Now with the help of live server extension, let's open this index.html file in our default browser. You can see this is our result. As you can see, I have already created a style.css file, and just below the title tag, let's give link for our style.css file. Now in the style.css file, within root pseudo class, let's declare primary color variable, and I'm giving this purple blue color. Browser by default, it applies some padding margin, so in order to prevent that, for the universal selector, let's give margin and padding to 0. And also I want to give box sizing to border box. Similarly, let's give font family to Poppins. So if you have internet connection, then that Poppins font will be applied. Otherwise, let's apply this sans serif. In your browser, you can see that beautiful font. As you can see, I have given the h3 heading, but that was just for the hints. It's not that necessary, so I'm not gonna explain much more about this, okay? It's just that I'm giving some text alignments, paddings, some background colors, so nothing much more complicated is going on. Now let's style the div with class name timeline wrapper. I'm giving maximum width of 100 VW, and for the height I'm giving 88 VH. Similarly, for the background color, let's give red. It's just for demo. Later on we'll remove this background color. For the class timeline, let's give height of 0.1 to rem. For the padding top and bottom, I'm giving 0. For the left and right, 4 rem. Similarly, let's give list style type to none so that we can remove that bullet points. Similarly, I'm giving background color of this gray color. Now let's remove that red background color. Now for the list items that is within our unordered list with class name timeline, let's give the width of 20 rem. And also let's give before should element for that list item. So let's give the position of absolute. Let's duplicate the same code, and for its parent, let's give position of relative. Similarly, when you are giving that before pseudo elements, it is compulsory to give that content CSS property. For the content, I'm giving their empty string. That means I'm not giving anything. Now for the div with class name timeline wrapper, let's give display flex. I'm giving justify content to center, and also align items to center. So with the help of this code, now you'll be able to bring your content exactly at the center of your div with class name timeline wrapper. Now for the before pseudo element, let's give left and top value to 50%. And also I'm giving transform, translate. And now for the x-axis and y-axis, I'm giving minus 50%. So with the help of this code, I'm trying to bring the before pseudo element exactly at the center of its parent, okay? And also I'm giving scale to, let's give this CSS variable scale. But as you can see, we haven't created that CSS skill variable. So within that class timeline, let's declare that skill CSS variable, and initially I'm giving there 1, but later on we'll change that. Okay, in order to give proper height and width for the before shoot elements, I need to give their display inline block, or you can give display block, but you have to give that. Okay, now for the width I'm giving 0.12 rem, so I'm giving the same width that I have given for the class timeline height, and for the height let's give 1 rem. Similarly for the background color, I'm giving same gray color. As you can see there, small vertical gray line. Now let's take it to the top. Okay, so for the top value I'm giving 1 rem. Now let's select this code and duplicate it, and we don't need that code. Let's remove that, and once again let's duplicate this code, and I'm giving the comma. So I'm giving another after pseudo element for our list item, and this before and after pseudo element, they are sharing the same CSS properties. I think it's better to keep separately that content for before and after pseudo elements. So for the before pseudo element, I'm giving their content to empty string, and now for the after pseudo element, for the content, I'm giving attribute function. So within that attribute function, what you can do is that first of all for the list item, let's give data attribute. So for the data, I'm giving their data date attribute, and let's give date. Now you can copy this data date attribute and paste it within that attribute function. Now you can see in your browser that date is intersecting with our paragraph. So let's take it to the proper position. For that, for the top, I'm giving minus 3.4 rem. Okay, this is the exact position that I want. So now let's give the proper style for our headings, paragraphs. For that, for the div with class name data, I'm giving width and height of 1.3 rem. Similarly for the background color, let's give the same gray color. By the way, you could create different CSS variable for this gray color, so that in future if you want to change the color, you just need to change that CSS variable. That would be better. Yeah, you can do that. In your browser you can see that gray square box, but the content within our div with class name data, they are overflowing. So in order to prevent that, you can give their overflow to hidden. And also for the text color, let's give white color. And instead of that square shape, I want to give the circular shape. So for that border radius, I am giving 50%. Similarly for the class data, I want to give the same this CSS properties. Okay, so for that, once again I'm using their comma, and let's give the same CSS property for our class data as well. Okay, now let's select this code and duplicate it. So now we are adding extra time for our timeline. Now for the class timeline, you can give their display flex. You can see everything is within same line, but you can see our title, they are not placed properly. Okay, so for the span with class name title, that is within the list item, for that class list as well, let's give the same CSS property. Okay, so we are sharing the same CSS property. Now you can see it is exactly at the center, but I think I need to take a bit bottom. So for that, for the class list, let's keep top to 2.4 rem. Let's change its font weight and font size. So for that, I'm using font shorthand property. For the font weight, I'm giving 600. For the font size, let's give 1.1 rem. And for the font family, we are giving the same Pompins sans serif. Now you can change the title. As you can see, if I give extra content, it automatically breaks the line. So for this span with class name title, if I give white space to pre, you can see we are getting that title in single line. Now let's change the title to normal. Initially for the class title, let's give opacity of 0. And let's duplicate the same code. And now when you hover that list items, at that time for the class title, I'll give opacity to 1. In the browser, you can see when you take your mouse near to that circle, that title is visible, but you won't be able to see that smooth transition. So in order to give that smooth transition for the class title, you need to give their transition. For the transition duration, I'm giving 0.5 seconds. For the timing function, let's give is. Did you see that? When you hover, you'll be able to get that smooth transition. Similarly, I want to give different style for the before element of that list items based on their position. So for that, for the list item, if I give their pseudo class nth child, and within that if I pass even, so for the before pseudo elements which are in even position, I want to change that top value. For that top value, instead of that +1, we'll give -1 rem. Now you can see that vertical gray line, which is in the odd position, they are pointing towards downside, and which is in the even position, they are pointing towards upside. So that is what I want. Similarly, let's apply the same thing for our after pseudo element. Let's duplicate this code and let's take it down. But for after pseudo elements, instead of that even position, we'll give their odd position, and for the top value, instead of that negative value, we'll give that positive 3.4 rem. Now in your browser, you can see. Similarly, let's duplicate this code and take it down. Now we are giving the same thing that we have give for our before and after pseudo elements. So for the class title, instead of that even, we'll give the odd position, and next to that I'm giving their greater than symbol. So the reason for giving greater than symbol before that class title, it's because you can see list items first child, that is the span with class name title. So I'm targeting to the first child of that list item with the help of that greater than symbol. When that title is in odd position, at that time we are changing that top value to minus 2.4 rem. Now in your browser, you can see when you hover, titles, they are taken to top and bottom based on their position. Now when you hover, I want to change that vertical gray lines background color. So let's duplicate this before pseudo element code and let's take it down. Now when you hover that list item, at the time for the before pseudo element, let's give background color to this primary color variable. And similarly, let's give the same color for the after pseudo element as well. So when you hover the list item, at the time for the after pseudo element, I'm giving the text color to that primary color. And also we'll give the same primary color for our class title, okay? So in your browser, you can see when you hover, we are getting that blue purple color. And also I need to change that circle's background color as well, okay? So for the class data, when you hover that list item, at that time for the background color, once again we are giving same primary color. So in your browser, once again you can see when you hover, you are getting that blue purple color. Similarly, let's change that scale CSS variable to 1.2. As you can see, we have already declared that scale CSS variable, and also have even their transform scale to same scale CSS variable. And also when you hover, let's give that cursor to pointer so that you can get pointing hand icon. For the div with class name data, when you add extra class, so at the time we'll change that height and width different background color, okay? So for that, for the div with class name data, when you are giving class, so at the time let's change width and height to 22 rem. And you can see we are getting that huge circular shape. So for the border radius, I'm giving 1 rem. In your browser, you can see when you hover, I think I need to give some padding. For the padding, I'm giving 1 rem. And also I want to change that background color. So for that, for the background image, I'm giving linear gradient. For the angle, let's give 45 degree. For the first color, we'll give the same primary color. For the second color, I'm giving magenta. Okay, we are facing some problem. Did you see that? We are getting date in front of our div with class name data. So for the class data, when you are giving class, so at the time let's give g index of 100. Now you can see that date is taken at the back. Similarly, let's give some box shadow. For the x offset, I'm giving 0. For the y offset, I'm giving 0.1 rem. For the spread value, 0.4 rem. And for the color, let's give this black color with some transparent value. Now we need to install these headings and different paragraphs, okay? So before that, for the div with class name data, let's give display flex direction to column, and also let's give justify content to space around. Now you can see these contents, they are distributed properly. For the h3 heading, that is within the div with class name data, I want to give text transform to capitalize. In your browser, you can see every beginning words character that is now in uppercase. Similarly, for the paragraph tag, that is within our div with class name data, let's give background color. I'm giving white color with some transparent value, and also I'm giving padding of 1 rem. And along with that padding, I'm giving border radius of 1 rem. But it could be better, you know, you can give some background images, you could use some different icons. And if I remove that class so from that data, now you will get that small circle. But if you have noticed there, within our circle, you can see some text. So in order to hide that, for the paragraph, let's give margin left of 0.7 rem. So yeah, this is exactly what I want. And when you are adding that class so for the div with class name data, at that time for the paragraph tag, we will change that margin left back to normal, which is 0. Let's tell that span tag with class name close. So for that span tag, let's give for the background color, let's give this sky blue color. And for the align self, let's give flex start. For its parent, that is div with class name data, I have used their flex box because of that it is occupying whole space. Okay, so in order to prevent that, I'm giving their align self to flex start. Similarly, let's give padding top to 0.5 rem, and for the left and right, I'm giving 0.8 rem. And also let's give border radius of 2 rem. I want to change the font size, so for the font size I am giving 1 rem. Now let's take our browser to the full screen by pressing F11 key. Now let's add 5 more dates within our timeline. I'm just copying and pasting this code. Okay, nothing much more is going on. I have just changed the values. That's all. So in your browser, did you see that? When we are adding extra dates within our timeline, all the contents, they are overflowing. So in order to prevent that, for the div with class name timeline wrapper, you can give overflow X to hidden. Now you can see all the overflowing elements, they are hidden. Now it's time to add and remove that class so for that div with class name data, and we are doing all that with the help of JavaScript code. There are very few lines of JavaScript code, so I'm using internal JavaScript. Just before the end of body tag, let's create a script tag, and within that let's create constant variable, and I'm assigning document.querySelector all. We are selecting all the list items that is within our unordered list with class name timeline. So I'm using their query selector all. Actually, we need to select all the div with class name data that is within our list items. Now we need to get all the div with class name data. For that, I'm using for off loop. I'm writing for const time of timeline. So we are iterating each div with class name data, and I'm representing each div with class name data as time. And for the time, I'm giving their event handler, that is click. So for that, I'm writing on click. So when you are clicking that div with class name data, at that time I'm assigning their arrow function within the same line. So when you click this circle, okay, at that time I'm writing time.classlist.toggle, and with the help of this toggle method we'll be able to add and remove the class. So for the class we are giving so, and as I have already shown you there in our style.css file, whenever you are giving that class so for the div with class name data, we are changing their different height and width, background colors, and many more. And at that time, in order to get that smooth transition, I think for the div with class name data, I have to give their transition. For the transition duration, I'm giving 0.3 second, and for the time function is, now you can see in your browser when I click that dots, you will be able to get more information with that animation. But you can see when you click different events and when you hover, all the elements, they are blocking each other. So in order to prevent that, you can do something like duplicate this G index and let's take it up there. So when you hover, at that time we'll change that G index to 200. Okay, so now you can see when you hover, you will be able to bring that content in front of you. And once again, if you click, we'll change that rectangular shape to circular shape. If you have observed carefully, we do have 7 different events, but in your browser you can see we are looking at only 4 different events. So now what I want to do is that when you move your mouse, along with your mouse, I want to take you to that specific events in order to create that kind of interactive timeline. Once again, I need to take the help of JavaScript code. First of all, we need to select this div with class name timeline wrapper. Let's duplicate the same code, and I'm using their comma so that I don't need to write that constant keyword multiple times. Instead of that query selector all, we are giving their query selector because we are selecting specific element, that is timeline wrapper. And also let's change that variable name to timeline wrapper. Now for timeline wrapper, let's give mouse move event. I'm writing timeline wrapper dot add event listener. So we are listening to the mouse move event, and for the second parameter, let's give the listener along with that arrow function. I'm passing their event. That event represents the mouse move event, and within that I'm creating a variable named timeline, and I'm assigning document.querySelector. So we are selecting the unordered list with class name timeline, but you can see I have already declared their variable name timeline. So I think it is better to change that timeline into timelines. That makes more sense. Okay, and within that for of loop, instead of that timeline, now you need to change it to timelines. Now whenever you are moving your mouse, At that time, I want to show you some values in console. So for the timeline width, I'm writing there timeline.client width. So with the help of this code, I'm trying to get the total width of our timeline, including the padding. Similarly, I want to get total width of our timeline wrapper. So for that, once again, I'm using that same code. Now you can see we have got two values, but I need one more value. That is the x coordinate of our mouse. Okay, so whenever you are moving your mouse, at that time, I want to detect x position of your mouse. So for that, you can write there e.pagex. So once again, in your browser, if I press F12 key, now you are getting the x coordinate of your mouse, total width of timeline, including padding. Similarly, we are getting total width of our timeline wrapper. So now with the help of these three values, you will be able to create that interactive timeline. So once again, I'm creating scroll width variable and I'm assigning e.pagex. Let's divide by this timeline wrapper's width, and I'm multiplying this value by within a small bracket. If I give timeline's width, let's subtract with timeline wrapper's width. Okay, it is difficult to show you in single line, so let's take it to the new line. Now we don't need that console, let's remove that, and instead let's see what we are storing in that scroll width variable. So in your browser, did you see that we are getting numeric value with long decimal digits? So in order to prevent that extra decimal digit, for that I'm writing dot to fix and I'm passing there 1. So now you can see we are getting only single decimal digit. Now when you move your mouse, in order to move your timeline along with your mouse, for that, for the class timeline, you need to give the position. I'm giving position of absolute, and for the class timeline wrapper, let's give position of relative because that is the parent of our class timeline. And now what you can do is that for the timeline, you can give the CSS value. You can write something like timeline.style.left. So now for the left, we can join this scroll width with string. So you can give their px. It is really important to give that CSS unit, otherwise it won't work. Okay, so in your browser, you can see when you move your mouse, along with your mouse, our timeline is moving, but this is not exactly what I want. I want something like when you move your mouse from left to right, at that time our timeline should move from right to left, I mean in the opposite direction, you know. So now in order to move our timeline in opposite direction, what you can do is that instead of subtracting our timeline wrapper's width from our timeline's width, what you can do is that let's subtract timeline's width from our timeline wrapper's width. If I change that, so now you can see this beautiful interactive timeline. So you can see when you move from left to right, our timeline that is moving in the opposite direction. But I have noticed there that for our touchscreen devices, it may not be supported because I have used their mouse move event. I'm not sure, but I have used their mouse move event. That event may not be triggered when you are working on touchscreen devices. So to make it sure like this works, instead of that overflow x, you can give their overflow x to auto. When you add overflow x to auto, now you will be able to see that horizontal scroll bar, but I need to hide that horizontal scroll bar. So for that, let's duplicate the same class timeline wrapper, and for the class timeline wrapper, let's give this pseudo element scroll bar, and I'm using their prefix WebKit. So for the scroll bar, let's give display to none, and now you can remove that class show from our div with class name data because we are dynamically adding that class with the help of JavaScript code. And if you have noticed carefully that you can interact with our timeline when you are within our timeline wrapper. Okay, so if you move your mouse just outside of that timeline, then you won't be able to interact with our timeline. Okay, so that is pretty cool. What do you think? Let me know in the comment box, and as always, if you have any idea, you can share with me. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did learn something, smash that like button. If you have any kind of queries, let me know in the comment box. Share this video if you think someone needs it, and also if you haven't already hit that subscribe button and also the notification bell icon. Remember, there is always more to learn, so keep learning.